Before you run to the next video, pause. Because what you're about to hear might be the moment your entire life turns around. You can outrun debt, enemies, and even your own excuses. But there is one presence you will never outrun. And the longer you try, the darker the path becomes. So listen closely. This message might be the very thing heaven appointed for you today. There comes a moment in every life when the footsteps grow heavy, the heart grows tired, and the soul whispers, how long will you try to outrun the voice calling your name? People run from responsibilities, from pain, from truth, but the most dangerous journey is the attempt to run from God. You can change your number, change your city, change the people around you, but you cannot change the fact that God knows exactly where you are right now. He knows the battles you hide behind your smile, the guilt you bury under busyness, the wounds you pretend you've healed from. Some of you listening today have been running for years, running into distractions, running into relationships, running into addictions, trying to drown out the quiet whisper that keeps saying, come home. And the farther you run, the heavier life becomes. You begin to realize the storm isn't outside, it's inside. The emptiness grows, the noise gets louder, and suddenly the things you thought would satisfy you only tighten the chains around your heart. But the truth is this, you're not running from an angry judge, you're running from a loving Father who refuses to give up on you. His pursuit is not to punish you, it's to save you from the very path you're on. He will let the winds rise. He will let the walls shake. Not because he hates you, but because he wants to stop you before you destroy yourself. Every closed door, every restless night, every silent tear, these are not accidents. They are signals. They are reminders. They are God's gentle ways of saying, you were never created to run from me. You were created to walk with me. So wherever you are, whatever you've done, no matter how far you've gone, hear this one truth. You can run until your legs fail, but you will never outrun the love that is running after you right now. No one has ever successfully escaped the presence of the Almighty, because every breath we take is borrowed from the one who formed us, and every step we walk is taken on ground he created. People have tried to flee from his call, to silence his voice, to bury their conscience under layers of distraction and noise, yet the whisper of eternity still follows them wherever they go. You can run into the deepest shadows, hoping the darkness will hide you, but even the darkness trembles before his light. You can drown yourself in the busiest crowds, thinking the noise will cover the truth, but his voice speaks louder than the chaos of the world. You can hide behind wealth, behind pride, behind sin, behind anger, behind pain, but his eyes see through every wall, every excuse, every mask you try to wear. Humanity has always tried to escape God's reach, imagining that freedom comes from pushing him away. But the farther a person runs, the heavier their soul becomes. They begin to discover that distance from God isn't freedom, it's exile. It's wandering through life without a compass, without direction, without peace. The heart becomes restless, the mind becomes weary, and the spirit becomes fragmented, because separation from the Creator strips us of the very meaning of our existence. Even when we convince ourselves we're in control, something deep inside whispers that there is more, something beyond our strength, our intelligence, our plans. That whisper is God's presence, gently reminding us that we were never meant to live disconnected from the one who gave us purpose. Every attempt to escape him becomes another reminder of how closely he walks with us. The storm you thought was coincidence, the guilt that wouldn't leave you, the blessing you didn't deserve, the unexpected moment of clarity. These are the fingerprints of a God who refuses to stop reaching. His presence doesn't vanish because we run, it grows louder. It becomes the echo in the night, the tug on the heart, the quiet confrontation that forces us to face what we've been avoiding. And even when we stumble into darkness by our own choices, his presence becomes the light that refuses to let the darkness consume us. No one has ever escaped him, because he is not chasing to condemn but to redeem, not following to imprison but to free, not pursuing to destroy but to restore. His presence is not a prison. It is the very place the soul discovers who it was always meant to be. Running from God always leads to deeper storms than the ones we were trying to avoid. Because the moment we turn our back on His voice, we walk straight into the chaos our own choices create. People often flee from God, not out of hatred, but out of fear. Fear of surrender, fear of conviction, fear of letting go of habits that feel comfortable but are slowly destroying them. They run believing they're escaping trouble, yet the path away from God is never smooth. It is a downhill road that grows darker with every step. What begins as a small compromise becomes a habit. What begins as a moment of disobedience becomes a lifestyle. And what begins as a quiet whisper of rebellion becomes a storm roaring through every corner of the soul. When someone runs from God, they begin to feel the weight of carrying their life alone. They carry burdens they were never meant to carry, fight battles they were never meant to fight, and live with anxieties they were never meant to face without divine strength. The storm inside grows louder. Confusion replaces clarity. Restlessness replaces peace. Temporary pleasures turn into deep regrets. And the very storm they were running from becomes mild compared to the storm they now face within of themselves. You cannot outrun the consequences of abandoning the one who knows the road ahead, the one who sees the dangers hidden in places we think are safe, the one who understands the long-term cost of choices we treat casually. The irony is that the moment we run from God, we also run from protection, wisdom, and the covering that shields us from storms we don't even see forming. Without Him, small problems become overwhelming, small temptations become destructive, and small fears grow into storms that shake the entire foundation of a person's life. The storm becomes the teacher that pride refused, the mirror that reveals what running tried to hide, the interruption that prevents us from destroying ourselves completely. And in those storms, when the noise gets too loud, when the pain becomes too heavy, when the confusion becomes too much to handle, we begin to realize the truth. The storm wasn't the punishment, it was the rescue. It is often in the deepest storms that people finally stop running, not because they are defeated, but because they finally understand that the presence they were avoiding was the only place they could ever find peace, direction, healing, and the strength to live a life they were created for. God doesn't chase us to punish. He pursues us to rescue, because His love refuses to let us drown in the very choices that threaten to destroy us. Many people imagine God is a distant judge waiting for them to fail, ready to bring consequences the moment they stumble, but that is not the truth of His nature. His pursuit is the march of mercy, not the march of wrath. When He follows us into the darkest corners of our lives, it is not to expose us in shame, but to lift us out of the destruction we've walked into. He sees the pain behind our rebellion, the fear behind our running, the wounds behind our defiance. And instead of abandoning us, He moves closer, calling us back to the place where healing begins. When we drift away from God, we often sink into patterns that feel comfortable at first but soon become chains. We chase empty promises, temporary highs, and false freedoms that leave us more broken than before. And just when we think we've gone too far, that we've done too much, that we are beyond forgiveness, His presence appears again, not with condemnation, but with compassion. His pursuit is the quiet reminder that no matter how far we've wandered, He still sees the value in us that we have forgotten. He doesn't run after us to catch us in our wrong. He runs after us because He knows we won't survive in our wrong. The consequences we fear are often the very places He begins to rebuild us, showing us that grace is stronger than guilt and love is stronger than failure. Think of every moment you felt conviction, every time your heart felt tugged, every time you knew you were making choices that would harm you, but something inside urged you to stop that was not punishment, that was rescue. It was God refusing to let your story end in the ruins of your decisions. His pursuit is gentle but unrelenting. He waits at doors we keep shut, whispers through the noise we surround ourselves with, and places people, moments, and circumstances in our path to remind us that we were made for something greater than running. And even when we turn away, He does not turn His back. Even when we choose sin, He offers mercy. Even when we fall, He extends His hand. His love is not the love that gives up. It is the love that breaks through barriers, confronts lies, and pulls us from the edge when we don't even realize how close we are to falling. He pursues because He knows rescue is the only way we will ever live in the fullness we were created for. The emptiness in the human heart is the echo of trying to live without God, a quiet hollowness that cannot be filled by success, relationships, pleasure, or achievement. People try to silence that echo with noise, with busyness, with distractions. But sooner or later, the stillness reveals a truth we cannot run from. The soul was never designed to function apart from its Creator. That emptiness is not a curse, it is a compass, pointing us back to the one who formed us. It is the spiritual hunger that reminds us we were created for something deeper, something eternal, something no earthly desire could ever satisfy. A heart disconnected from God beats, but it does not truly live. It moves, but it does not know its direction. It seeks, but it never finds rest. Many people spend their entire lives trying to fill that void with things that sparkle for a moment but fade as quickly as they appear. They pursue money thinking it will give them worth, pleasure thinking it will give them peace, relationships thinking they will give them identity, power thinking it will give them control. But every attempt ends the same way, with a deeper thirst than before. That is why even those who seem to have everything often confess to feeling nothing inside. Their hearts are crowded with the world, yet starving for God. And the more they feed that emptiness with temporary things, the louder the echo becomes, reminding them that they're chasing shadows instead of substance. This emptiness is the divine alarm within us, warning us that something essential is missing. It is the whisper of eternity calling us back to the source of life. It shows itself in restlessness that sleep cannot fix, in loneliness that crowds cannot cure, in anxiety that success cannot silence. It follows people into their highest moments and their darkest nights because it is not created by circumstances, it is created by separation. A heart without God is like a lamp without oil. It was made to shine, but without its source it flickers until it dies out. And yet this emptiness is also the doorway to hope. It is the place where transformation begins, where the soul finally admits that it cannot save itself, cannot satisfy itself, cannot sustain itself. The emptiness becomes the invitation to return to the one who alone can fill it, not with fleeting emotions, but with a peace that stays, a joy that strengthens, and a love that restores what life has broken. It is the echo that leads us home, the reminder that true life begins only when we return to the God who shaped us for Himself. Every step away from God is a step toward confusion, fear, and spiritual exhaustion, because the moment we choose our own path over His guidance, we place ourselves in a world we were never meant to navigate alone. The human heart was created to walk in the light of divine direction, and when that light is ignored, shadows begin to grow around our thoughts, our decisions, and our desires. People often drift from God slowly, believing the distance is harmless, believing they're still in control, but with every step they take, clarity fades a little more. What once felt certain becomes uncertain. What once felt peaceful becomes restless. And the inner compass that once pointed toward truth begins spinning with no direction. Confusion doesn't come suddenly. It enters quietly through compromises we justify and distractions we embrace. Soon the voice of God grows faint, drowned out by the noise of our own ambitions and impulses. And when the voice of truth fades, the lies grow louder. Fear creeps in because the soul knows it is walking without protection, without purpose, without the anchor that once held it steady. Fear of the future, fear of failure, fear of being alone, these begin to stalk the heart that has wandered from its Creator. The world promises freedom, outside of God. But that freedom quickly becomes a cage of uncertainty where every decision feels heavier and every mistake feels more costly. And then comes the exhaustion, the deep soul-level weariness that no amount of sleep, entertainment, success, or distraction can cure. It is the exhaustion of carrying burdens that were never meant to rest on human shoulders. It is the exhaustion of pretending to be strong while crumbling inside, of pretending to be confident while drowning in doubt, of pretending to be whole while feeling spiritually empty. This exhaustion is the silent proof that distance from God is not liberation, it is suffocation. It drains the spirit, tightens the mind, and leaves the heart aching for a rest it no longer remembers how to find. Yet in the middle of that confusion, fear, and exhaustion, something beautiful happens. The soul begins to crave the one it walked away from. Even the deepest darkness cannot erase the memory of the light. Even the strongest fear cannot silence the longing for peace. And even the heaviest exhaustion cannot extinguish the hope that waits in God's presence. Every step away from Him brings pain, but every step back toward Him brings clarity, strength, and the restoration the weary heart has been searching for all along. Sooner or later, God allows a moment that forces us to stop running and look upward, because there comes a point when the soul can no longer outrun truth, pain, or purpose. Life has a way of cornering us, not to destroy us, but to awaken us. We rush through our days pretending we are strong enough, wise enough, and in control enough to outrun conviction, outrun consequences, outrun the whisper of God calling us home. But eventually, God permits a moment that halts our speed, breaks our patterns, and interrupts our escape. It may come through a crisis we never expected, a loss that shakes us, a door that slams shut, or a sudden emptiness that nothing can fill. These moments feel like breaking points, but in reality, they are turning points, divine invitations to lift our eyes from the ground we've been running on and finally look toward the heavens. God does not allow these moments out of cruelty. He allows them because He knows that as long as we keep running, we will run past Him, run past healing, run past the very life we were meant to live. When the things we trusted collapse, when the distractions we relied on fail, when the people we depended on walk away, we are left with a silence that speaks louder than everything we chased. In that silence, the heart begins to hear again. The noise of the world fades, and the truth rises. Something inside whispers that maybe the very thing we feared, turning back to God, is the only thing that can save us. There is always a moment when God stops letting us succeed in the wrong direction. Not because He wants to punish us, but because He loves us too deeply to let us destroy ourselves. The moment that feels like the end is often the moment God is beginning something new. The failure that feels unbearable becomes the place where pride finally breaks. The loneliness that feels overwhelming becomes the place where we realize His arms are still open. The crisis that feels impossible becomes the very stage where God reveals how close He has been all along. And in that moment when running is no longer possible, when pretending is no longer enough, when our strength finally collapses, we do the only thing the soul was created to do. We stop, we breathe, we look upward. And when our eyes lift, even for a second, we realize the God we thought we left behind never left us at all, and His presence was waiting patiently for the moment we would finally turn back toward Him. The greatest battles in life are not outside of us. They are the battles we fight against God's calling, because the deepest struggles are waged not on battlefields or in boardrooms, but inside the quiet corridors of the human heart. We often think our greatest enemies are circumstances, people, failures, or fears. Yet none of these compare to the storm that rises when God calls us toward purpose and we resist Him. There is a tension that forms when God asks us to step into something greater, something holier, something beyond our comfort, and we cling to the familiar instead. It is the struggle between who we are and who God is shaping us to become, and that struggle can be more exhausting than any challenge the world could ever throw at us. Every soul feels this battle. It shows up as hesitation when God nudges us to change our lifestyle. It rises as fear when He calls us to surrender a habit, a relationship, or a sin we've grown attached to. It becomes a heaviness when He pushes us toward forgiveness we don't want to give, or toward a purpose we don't feel worthy of. The greatest battles are the ones where our will collides with His, where our desires collide with His direction, where our plans collide with His purpose. And because God's calling aims to transform us, it naturally confronts everything inside us that wants to stay the same. People often think running from God is easier than obeying Him. But that disobedience becomes a battlefield where peace is replaced with turmoil. We argue with God in our mind. We negotiate with Him in our conscience. We delay obedience, hoping the conviction will fade. But the calling of God doesn't weaken with time, it strengthens, pressing deep into the heart until we either surrender or break under the weight of resisting it. This inner conflict drains us more than any physical struggle ever could. It steals sleep, steals joy, steals clarity, because the soul knows it was designed to move with God, not against Him. Yet even in this battle there is hope, because God's calling is not a command meant to burden us. It is an invitation meant to free us. He calls us toward things we cannot imagine yet desperately need: peace, purpose, healing, redemption. And the moment we stop fighting Him, the battle becomes a doorway. The struggle gives way to strength. The resistance gives way to release. And the life we feared to step into becomes the life we were created for all along. You can hide your sins from people, but you cannot hide them from the one who sees every corner of the soul. Because there is no mask thick enough, no lie clever enough, no darkness deep enough to hide us from the eyes of the God who created us. People become experts in pretending to be strong, pretending to be righteous, pretending to be in control. They learn how to smile while their hearts are breaking, how to speak holy words while living unholy lives, how to hide guilt beneath confidence and shame beneath laughter. But while the world only sees the surface, God sees the truth beneath every layer. He sees the moments we regret, the secrets we bury, the temptations we entertain, the choices we hope no one ever discovers. To Him, nothing is hidden and nothing is overlooked. This truth is not meant to terrify us. It is meant to set us free, because hiding sin does not remove it. It strengthens its grip. Unconfessed sin becomes a weight on the soul, a shadow that follows us, a poison that drains our peace. We lie to others to protect ourselves, but the lies only trap us deeper. We avoid God because we fear His reaction, yet it is His presence that offers the very forgiveness we are starving for. People run from God's sight because they think exposure means condemnation, but God reveals our sin not to destroy us, but to heal us. He shines light on the hidden places because He knows darkness is where sin grows strongest. When we hide our sins from people, we may protect our reputation, but we lose our intimacy with God. The heart grows colder. The conscience grows dull. And the more we hide, the more isolated we become from the one who longs to restore us. But the moment we stop hiding, the moment we stand honest before Him, something extraordinary happens. He does not turn away. He leans closer. He does not reject. He redeems. He does not shame. He washes clean. God sees every corner of the soul, not to judge every weakness, but to transform every part of us that is broken. He sees the sin, but He also sees the potential. He sees the guilt, but He also sees the future. He sees the darkness, but He also sees the light we were meant to carry. And when we finally come out of hiding, we discover that the eyes we feared were not eyes of anger, but eyes of mercy waiting to embrace us. The moment we step into the truth, the peace you're searching for is found only when you surrender, not when you run. Because running only multiplies the noise inside you, while surrender silences it. People chase peace in 1,000 different directions: money, relationships, distractions, achievements, addictions, hoping that one day something will finally quiet the storms within them. But every escape route leads them deeper into restlessness, because peace was never something the world could give. Peace is not the absence of problems, nor the absence of pain. It is the presence of God in the middle of those storms. And the soul cannot receive that presence while it is in rebellion, hiding, resisting, or running from the very one who offers it. Running feels easier in the moment. It feels like control, like freedom, like self-protection. But what begins as a small step away from God becomes a journey into exhaustion. The farther a person runs, the heavier their heart becomes. No matter where they go, the unrest follows them like a shadow. They lie awake at night replaying the things they tried to forget. They fill their days with noise, hoping to drown the inner emptiness. They avoid silence because silence exposes what is missing. And the truth is always the same. Peace is not found in movement away from God. It is found in returning to Him. Surrender, on the other hand, feels frightening because it demands honesty, humility, and letting go. It requires admitting that our strength is not enough, our strategies are failing, and our way of living is not leading us where we hope. But once the heart bows, once the soul stops resisting, once the running finally stops, something miraculous happens. The burden lifts, the confusion clears, the fear loosens its grip. God steps into the space we once filled with chaos, and His presence begins to settle the storms that overwhelmed us. True surrender is not defeat, it is deliverance. It is laying down the weapons we used against God and discovering that His arms were open the whole time. It is letting Him fight the battles we were never meant to fight alone. It is exchanging anxiety for assurance, confusion for clarity, and turmoil for the stillness that only His Spirit can bring. Peace does not come from figuring out every problem, controlling every outcome, or running from every conflict. Peace comes when the heart yields and says, God, I cannot do this without you. And in that moment, the soul finally finds the rest. It has been longing for all along. God's love is so relentless that even your rebellion becomes the road back to Him. Because no matter how far you wander, no matter how deeply you fall, His pursuit never ceases. Human hearts often rebel out of pride, fear, or pain, thinking that independence or defiance will bring freedom. We push away, we resist, we turn our backs, and yet every act of rebellion carries within it a seed that points back to the one who made us. Even when we run, His presence shadows our steps. Even when we deny Him, His voice still whispers in the depths of our soul. Even when we choose sin, He uses the consequences of that choice to draw us closer, to awaken us, to redirect us toward life. Rebellion may feel like freedom, but it is often a road paved with emptiness, regret, and the harsh lessons of experience. We discover that the very things we chase to satisfy our desires often leave us hollow, broken, or trapped. Our mistakes, our stubbornness, our defiance, they are not wasted. They become teachers, exposing the futility of running and the strength of surrender. Each misstep, each failure, each act of defiance can become the very signpost pointing us back to God's mercy. Even when we refuse His guidance, He arranges circumstances, places people in our lives, and orchestrates events in such a way that the heart begins to recognize the futility of rebellion and the inevitability of His grace. The beauty of God's relentless love is that it does not wait for perfection or repentance before pursuing us. It meets us in our weakness, our rebellion, and our chaos. It does not demand that we fix ourselves first. Instead, it gently and persistently pursues, often allowing the very consequences of our rebellion to teach us dependence, humility, and trust. It is in the hardest moments of our wandering, in the darkest valleys of our choices, that His love shines brightest. Even when we feel unworthy, even when we feel lost beyond hope, even when we have built walls too high to climb, God's love refuses to release us. Our rebellion may be loud, messy, and destructive, yet it does not stop His pursuit. He transforms the detours we create into pathways. The collisions we cause into redirections, and the pain we endure into reminders of His mercy. The more we run, the more evident it becomes that our steps away from Him are not permanent barriers. They are the very journey that leads us home, where His love has been patiently waiting all along. God's love is so relentless that even your rebellion becomes the road back to Him, because no matter how far you wander, no matter how deeply you fall, His pursuit never ceases. Human hearts often rebel out of pride, fear, or pain, thinking that independence or defiance will bring freedom. We push away, we resist, we turn our backs, and yet every act of rebellion carries within it a seed that points back to the one who made us. Even when we run, His presence shadows our steps. Even when we deny Him, His voice still whispers in the depths of our soul. Even when we choose sin, He uses the consequences of that choice to draw us closer, to awaken us, to redirect us toward life. Rebellion may feel like freedom, but it is often a road paved with emptiness, regret, and the harsh lessons of experience. We discover that the very things we chase to satisfy our desires often leave us hollow, broken, or trapped. Our mistakes, our stubbornness, our defiance, they are not wasted. They become teachers, exposing the futility of running in the strength of surrender. Each misstep, each failure, each act of defiance can become the very signpost pointing us back to God's mercy. Even when we refuse His guidance, He arranges circumstances, places, people in our lives, and orchestrates events in such a way that the heart begins to recognize the futility of rebellion and the inevitability of His grace. The beauty of God's relentless love is that it does not wait for perfection or repentance before pursuing us. It meets us in our weakness, our rebellion, and our chaos. It does not demand that we fix ourselves first. Instead, it gently and persistently pursues, often allowing the very consequences of our rebellion to teach us dependence, humility, and trust. It is in the hardest moments of our wandering, in the darkest valleys of our choices, that His love shines brightest. Even when we feel unworthy, even when we feel lost beyond hope, even when we have built walls too high to climb, God's love refuses to release us. Our rebellion may be loud, messy, and destructive, yet it does not stop His pursuit. He transforms the detours we create into pathways, the collisions we cause into redirections, and the pain we endure into reminders of His mercy. The more we run, the more evident it becomes that our steps away from Him are not permanent barriers. They are the very journey that leads us home, where His love has been patiently waiting all along.